Welcome to Pro Sex Studios. I'm Brian Downs, and on this channel we examine the attitudes about sexuality presented in famous films, well-known television shows, and similar media products. Today we're looking at 1995's Before Sunrise, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, the great slacker romance. Headed west from Budapest, Jesse meets Celine on a Eurail train. Jesse, played by Hawke, is a young American, about 23 years old or so. He's on his way to Vienna. He's going to get on an airplane back home at 9:30 tomorrow morning, back home to America. Celine is a young French woman on her way home to Paris from a visit with family in Budapest. But Jesse invites her to spend the day with him in Vienna. They've hit it off so well on the train that he would like to continue spending as much time with her as he can. And she agrees. She gets off the train and they wander the streets of a magical realism version of Vienna as they confide in one another, get to know one another, and fall in love with one another. It's a beautiful film, a bit slow-paced, and a bit annoying in the way it follows along with relatively mundane conversation a good period of the time. But well shot, well acted, and touching. But what about sex? Well, it's clear that these two people are attracted to each other from the beginning. It's about 20 minutes in that they're in Vienna and they're riding on a tram and they start asking each other personal questions under the guise of a game. I'm going to ask you a personal question, you have to answer honestly, and then you get to ask me one. And of course, the questions are about sex and romance, and they're sitting so closely together that Jesse has little choice but to put his arm around the back of the seat behind Celine's head. A few minutes after that, they've squeezed themselves into a listening booth in a record store to listen to a love song with the repeated phrase, "Come here." And they're clearly struggling with their desire for one another. They avoid eye contact, but they stand very close to each other. They chew their lips nervously. They're struggling to hide their desire for one another, from one another. Except that Jesse knew exactly what he was doing when he invited her into the listening booth. He wanted to be close to her, and Celine knew exactly what she was doing when she accepted his invitation. But they have to pretend that they don't. A few minutes later, they're alone together on a Ferris wheel, but an incredibly elaborate one where the individual gondolas are like little houses, really. They're about 8 feet on a side and you can walk around inside them, and they are alone in their gondola and they come together physically in the space, and until they are closer and closer and just inches apart, and he tries to indicate that he wishes to kiss her, and inches from his face with her arms around his shoulders she says, "Are you trying to say you want to kiss me?" And then she kisses him with great passion. Only a few minutes later, of course, she's needling him about his romanticism on the Ferris wheel, because he has been talking about the false promise of romanticism in life. When they talk about their past relationships while playing pinball in a bar, she says, "I was very disappointed. He was very stupid, ugly, bad in bed, alcoholic. You know, I was kind of giving him a favor. But when he dumped her, she was so upset that she had to go to a therapist, and the therapist nearly turned her into the police because she had written a story, a piece of fiction about a woman who kills her ex-boyfriend, and the therapist found this so alarming she threatened to call the authorities." He reveals that he came to Europe to visit his lover, who had been studying in Spain, in Madrid. But when he arrived, he discovered that she was no longer his lover. Not that she would say that, not that she would tell him that, she just avoided him. And so he wound up wandering around heartbroken on Eurail for a couple of weeks. Both of these stories are negative meme number 1, the wanting disaster, in the past tense. I've identified 12 negative memes that are repeated endlessly in movies and television, designed to make you feel anxious and sad and bad about your own sexuality as they are repeated to you in a drumbeat. And number 1 is the wanting disaster. Desiring sex, wanting sex, having sex leads to a bad result. Neither of them has one word to say about their sexual past that isn't a disaster, that isn't sad, that isn't heartbreaking, that isn't some kind of failure. In the course of their long conversation during this film, she tells him that she has a terrible paranoid thought that men might have invented feminism to get more sex, because women would be sexually freer. This is a terribly revealing moment. Hooray, feminism. Hooray for equal rights. Hooray for women being, fully equal and liberated and not treated as cattle, of course. But oh, gee, won't that lead to increased sexual autonomy? Yes, it will. But what if the men enjoy that sexual autonomy? What if someone is enjoying sex? What if increased liberty among adults leads to more sex? Horrors. Also, she clearly sees sex as a zero-sum shirts versus skin battle that has to be won and lost. She sees it in a negative light. A few minutes later, after they've seen a woman performing a dance number in the street, Ethan remarks, I heard about this old guy who was watching some young people dance, and he said, how beautiful. They're trying to shake off their genitals and become angels. And Julie replies, I like that. Because higher beings don't have genitals. It is beautiful to try to get rid of your genitals. It is an aspiration to be an angel without genitals or sexuality. Sex is danger, negative light. Sex is bad. Sex is for dirty monkeys. Dancing isn't about sex. By the way, dancing is about sex. It's about trying to transcend all that dirty physical business. Finally, in this fairly minimalist mumblecore romance classic, they wind up alone in a park in the small hours of the morning. He can't afford a hotel, although they can seem to afford any number of cafes and bars and Ferris wheel rides. They wind up alone in a park, in the woods basically, in the small hours of the morning, drinking red wine from a bottle donated by a sympathetic bartender. They had to steal the glasses. He tells her that being with her makes him feel like a different person, that it lets him escape from his own company, which is something that he's never done before or experienced before. His sexual desire for her is separate from himself. It's not his. He doesn't have to say, this is me, this is Jesse feeling sexual desire, this is some other person. This is a version of the negative meme, serious people don't sex, but more on serious people don't sex in a moment. They kiss passionately. They're in the grass together, embracing. But she breaks off the kiss, and she says, and here's the moment, here's everything, here is the issue. She breaks off from the kiss, and she says, I have to say something stupid. It's very stupid. That's how she feels about it. That's how she frames what she's about to say. That's her opinion on her own opinion. It's stupid. And she wants to open this dialogue with that information. That's the important thing to know. What she's about to say is stupid. She goes on to say, I don't think we should sleep together. I mean, I want to, but since we're never going to see each other again, it'll make me feel bad. I won't know who else you're with. I'll miss you. But he indicates differently, and he says, I want to sleep with you. And her tone flips instantly to amused derision, where she says, no, then it's like some male fantasy, meet a French girl on the train, fuck her and never see her again, and have this great story to tell. I don't want it to be a great story. I don't want this great evening to just have been for that. Let's break this down. And there's a lot to break down. She clearly longs for him and he for her. Their longing aches in every scene of this film. They've been making out intermittently all day within inches of each other. Absolutely overwhelmed with sexual tension. They are two consenting adults who are not in any other relationship that would make a sexual encounter between them unethical in any way or damaging to any third party. So what's the problem? If they have sex and then part, she will miss him? Are you not going to miss him if you don't have sex? Will you forget him by this time tomorrow? If you don't have sex tonight, you will miss him. You're in love. That's really the point of the film, that you've fallen in love. So not having sex makes everything much better. Having sex makes it worse, danger is sex. That's one of the negative memes. Sex is danger. That sex is going to be the problem, the wrong thing to do. That's what she starts with. Sex will make it worse. I don't see where that's true. You're going to miss him anyway. He's going to miss you. You're both consenting adults. You started this speech with, I have to say something stupid. This entire film is about their magical connection in a few precious Austrian hours. But if they have sex, she'll miss him worse. But then she goes on to assert that she doesn't want it to be like some male fantasy. Well, what does that mean? What is a male fantasy exactly? Do you mean you don't want it to be too erotically charged, too erotically exciting for him? Well, what you're doing is pretty erotic already. You've two people alone all day long, walking through the movie set beautiful streets of Vienna, holding hands, making out. It's pretty erotic to start with. And also, what are you trying to say, that there's a level of erotic enjoyment that you don't want him to go past? You don't want this to be too perfect from his point of view? Why? If you want to be his lover, you should be trying to increase his erotic enjoyment, and he should be trying to increase yours. You don't say, oh no, past, this is fine, but this is stupid, a sin, crime against I don't know what. You're refusing to have sex with him because you think he'll really, really enjoy it? What if he only sort of enjoyed it? Would that be better? Also, she doesn't want him to have a great story to tell. Okay, you don't want him to have a great story to tell. Well, you shouldn't have gotten off the train. This story is so great they made a famous movie about it, even when you don't have sex. So mission unaccomplished there. Additionally, what about him makes you think he's a jerk? What about him makes you think that he's just going to go home and brag to Pete and Mitchell back in Wisconsin that he screwed this French girl he met on the train? And what do you care if he does, by the way, if you expect never to see him again? What do you care about Pete and Mitchell in Wisconsin? But again, let's circle back. Why do you think he's this terrible jerk? And if you think he's the terrible jerk who would behave like that, why are you spending the day with him in Vienna? But I don't want you to have a story to tell. Well, he's got a story to tell even without sex. You think he's not going to go home and say, I met a girl who was as beautiful as Julie Delphi on the train and we held hands all day in Vienna? Of course he is. But the point of this moment is that they don't have sex. She resists her sexual desire. I have something stupid to say. I want to sleep with you. But we shouldn't, because it would be too nice. Because it would be too much like a male fantasy. You would like it too much. Because it would make me miss you. But I'm going to miss you anyway. Serious people don't sex. This is one of the most common negative memes. Smart people, heroes, people with responsibilities, the people we're supposed to like, don't sex. They either don't have sex at all, or they have some kind of brief experiment with sex and then give it up. Celine refuses to have sex with another consenting adult with whom she's clearly very attracted. That attraction is obviously reciprocated. They long for each other. It's in their eyes. But they don't. Because that's better. Because you're a pig for liking sex. So here we go. Again, famous romance. But romances very often have a strongly negative attitude about sexuality. Strongly negative. This is another example. If you're finding any of this interesting, please like, subscribe, share, put it on social media. That's a big help. Come back next week for more of the same, where I examine other films and other TV series to find out the sexual subtext in our popular culture. Again, I'm Brian Downs. This is Pro Sex Studio. Thank you for your time.